hand the talking stick over to Debbie because Debbie has really reached out to identify some folks who have great experience doing showcases, and I certainly have some myself, but really want to get the folks that Debbie's rounded up because I think this is such an important area to consider, especially because our learners are investing so much time and energy in creating these fantastic e-portfolios, and giving them an opportunity to really showcase what they've created, I think is very powerful. So Debbie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
bringing
much.
everyone together.
Oh, this is such an exciting time, I think, because showcases are becoming almost ubiquitous across campuses, whether those are in person or online. So I think it's wonderful to dedicate a little bit of time to look at that and how these kinds of things evolve. We're lucky enough to have technical wizards and amazing administrators on staff working to support students and undergraduate research. So I thought it would be great to hear from a tech guru and an administrative master managing programs to see behind the scenes what's happening at some of these showcases. So I'd like to start with Holly Lindsay. She oversaw 2 students doing an internship who built a database that we're going to use as a repository for student e-portfolios, but the students are in charge. They enter the data, they select the URL that they're going to share, and then they can unpublish if they don't want it in there any longer. It was a long road, and Holly's been very patient every step of the way. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that experience, shifting from one showcase model to a student controlled showcase model?
Yeah. So I will go ahead and share my screen just to kind of show you the 2 different versions that we were looking at. So in 2022, and we had done that for basically since the pandemic, we'd done a virtual showcase for engaged learning in general. So it included a lot of e-portfolios, but it wasn't the only thing in the showcase. And with this showcase, there were a few challenges and restrictions to it. The categories that we had chosen weren't necessarily always meaningful to students, and there was a lot of overlap that couldn't necessarily be represented when you were looking at individual projects. And then for the user experience of the showcase, you had to click a few links before you even saw any student work. And then on the behind the scenes side, it was a little bit labor intensive and time consuming to put together because each e-portfolio or project was a separate page in our web content management system. And so it wasn't difficult, but it was quite time consuming to get them all in. Yeah, moving on to the project that we developed, I helped 2 students develop that as part of a capstone/internship experience. And as you can see, everything's condensed onto one page, making for a better user experience. These links just go directly to their e-portfolio, so you don't have to click onto different screens. We've got filters, so then that overlap and can be represented in terms of something can fall under multiple categories, and you can filter by that. And then just a basic keyword search. So if you want to search biomedical, for example, I spelled it wrong. You can see projects and e-portfolios that had that keyword, or if you want to search for a person's name, you can then find based on the student's name. Yeah, that's kind of an overview of that. I don't know if there's anything else specific you wanted me to touch on, but
I'm not sure you were on the gathering data side, but what I can tell everyone is each faculty member created an Excel sheet and sent it to the Institute of Engaged Learning, where there were a team of students who did data entry. So it literally took hundreds of hours to put the old showcase together. Now, I will say that building the database probably took hundreds of hours, but in the future, much of that labor will be removed because of the good work that Holly, Sierra, and Summer did over the last year for us. So, questions for Holly? I see people saying like, this is so cool. nice process. And I'm with Jillian. I wanted one and Holly built it for me. So I love that the students are in charge and they're doing the data entry now. Faculty, not so much, because they can't verify that the student put it in until we publish. But we're hoping to expand and fine tune it in the years to come.
There's a question in the chat. Holly, have you heard about how other students, instructors, and even outside stakeholders like prospective employers are using this great resource?
I don't know if you've heard anything else, Debbie, but since it was just this past spring that this was launched, so haven't heard a ton beyond just it being shared out within the university, but yeah.
The one comment I've heard is now I can get to stuff easily, where before you had to know specifically what to click and what to go to and where to go next. Students had a hard time finding their work in the showcases. So we're hoping that cultivates sort of a culture of students sharing and knowing they can easily get back to it, and faculty knowing how simple it is to search for the student work.
There's a question, how are you tracking views? At this point, all of our sites just have basic like Google Analytics tracking. That's one thing that, you know, as we continue to improve it, hopefully we can get something more specific, but at this point, just the basic analytics that we have on all of our web pages.
Then one more question, if it's okay.
Sure.
Do you have plans to engage the students regularly so that as time goes on, they can either update their portfolios or choose to have them no longer in the database? Because, you know, over 5 or 10 years, that information might not reflect the way they want to be viewed in the world. So have you thought about how students can be continuously part of the process as opposed to at once?
So the one goal is that they're part of the process in that they can upload multiple URLs throughout their college experience. So they aren't limited to just a homepage on one ePortfolio. The other thing, my students, and then hopefully we can expand consistently, know that they can just unpublish. So when they don't want to be in the repository, there are going to be tens of thousands of things in this repository within the next 3 years. So we aren't going to be able to necessarily manage that for them, but they can just click unpublish and it's a dead link. And we want the dead links. We want them to own it when they're done. We want them to feel free to take it down. And then we can scrub Holly, can we scrub the dead links?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, luckily we have tools that can easily log broken links for us so we can find those.
Thank you.
Julian asked, are there tips for encouraging students to share? I make it an assignment and they get points for doing it. So, but again, hopefully then we're building a culture where that happens. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask Holly, you know, so how have you documented the work that went into this? And I'm asking that because back to the I want one comment, like, will you have a way of sharing this so that it's easy for other campuses to employ a similar kind of approach to this database creation?
Yeah, in theory, we could share something like that. The students did do a certain amount of keeping track of things themselves because it was part of for one student, it was their capstone. For the other student, it was their like internship course. And there was a certain amount of like, I think one of the students had to create an e-portfolio about the project, about the process as part of their course. So they did tracking on that end. And then I also made sure that they were keeping some documentation so that, again, when they were no longer working on the project, we could continue to support it and it didn't just kind of fizzle out and become unusable once they were gone.
By the way, Summer and Sierra won the campus award for their project, for their engaged learning project. So it was amazing. And Holly was a fabulous mentor, support, and tech aficionado every step of the way. So like hats off to all of them for making such a great tool.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Holly and Emily. This is great.
So we were looking at two specific models, one that's online, right? Like Holly's generated, like you see at CUNY, like you see at Arizona State. There's so many, like Digication will automatically make for you, that PebblePad will automatically do for you. We went with something that's platform agnostic, and yes, it's challenging. But this is what Holly created and her students through this process. Emily faced a very different challenge. They were on campus and had these giant rooms full of posters. And that was the showcase for their undergraduate research and internship programs. And she and Brandy completely revolutionized that and saved over $7,500 a year through ePortfolios. So Emily, take it away.
Thank you. I do have some slides I'm going to share real quickly. And Debbie, thank you for the introduction. But yeah, my name is Emily Mills, and I was the program coordinator for the 2022-2023 academic year for the Life Health Sciences, otherwise known as LHSI, and the sophomore internship program, otherwise known as SIP. We love our acronyms here at IUPUI, so if you're ever confused, feel free to put something in the chat and we'll make sure to explain it. But today, I really am talking about how we have gotten to our current model of what we call the internship showcase. And that is where we have 3 to 4 programs, different internship programs each spring, gather all of their interns together in the campus center. If you're not familiar with IUPUI, that's sort of our hubbub, our building for where we have major events. We gather all of our interns there and they present their e-portfolios essentially, or their e-portfolios are there for visitors to see. So how did we get there? Because we weren't always at the internship showcase points like Debbie had mentioned. So a little bit of history. So the Life Health Sciences internship program, LHSI, had done poster sessions from its start in 2008 till about 2019. So those were printed poster, classic poster sessions that you see from campus to campus. Meanwhile, SIP, that's sort of my territory, what I'm most familiar with. SIP had an ePortfolio showcase from its start in 2017 to 2019. And then IUPUI had decided to do this thing kind of originally as part of like the week-long celebration we have for engaged learning, had decided to do a general ePortfolio showcase in 2015 and 2016, which LHSI was a part of. And then that was merged with something called the E.C. Moore Symposium of Teaching and Learning in 2017. And again, LHSI was a part of that. So you see, we have these sort of parts going on, but they're not quite mixed yet. And we do get there eventually in 2019. So spring 2019, we moved to that that box all the way to the right. The internship showcase, that's what we call it, began as a partnership between LHSI and SIP in the spring of 2019. And at the time, LHSI did still use posters because that's what they were most familiar with, even though they had been doing ePortfolios since 2011. LHSI stuck with the posters and SIP were doing the ePortfolios, they were presenting those. But at long last, spring 2019, we finally have the internship showcase format. And then spring 2020 hit, and I'm sure those two words together sort of have like chills going down your spine because you're like, spring 2020. So the pandemic hits, and quickly, because the showcase does occur in the spring of each academic year, some reinventing, some reimagining had to happen. But luckily, because LHSI had been doing ePortfolio since 2011 and SIP already had those established, both programs were able to quickly pull together all of those links and put it into the ePortfolio showcase that you saw just earlier from Holly. So that was a virtual showcase, and that occurred in 2020 and 2021. So for both of those springs, it was a virtual format. Now that we are back in person, for the 2022 and 2023 years, So those springs, we have had the internship showcase in person. And because of spring 2020, LHSI did sort of have to rethink, like Debbie had introduced, they had to rethink and reimagine how they wanted to do the internship showcase, and how they wanted to participate in that. As Debbie had mentioned, printing posters can cost quite a bit, and that comes out of the program's budget. So at the time, printing posters could cost at its peak $7,500. And of course, the program had evolved from its start as well. In the beginning, LHSI was really focused on STEM-based internships, but it had expanded to include liberal arts-based ones, or health and human sciences that might not necessarily be able to make a poster as easily as, say, a STEM-based could. It had just become irrelevant for some sites or just difficult to conceptualize. And so there became this desire to have an alternative for sharing relevant and authentic learning. And that's how we got to ePortfolios. So the solution was that interns could embed a final project, and the final project is akin to the posters that LHSI interns had been doing. They could embed a final project in the ePortfolio, and the interns get to choose what they share in the medium that they share it. So it just needs to be in their ePortfolio, and we use Google Sites. And so they can embed a digital poster if they'd like. They can do slides. We've had interns do videos before, or just simply share their work products of what they're doing at the internship site. And then there at the internship showcase, they would present that final project through their ePortfolio to whoever comes to their table. And when it comes to visitors at our showcases, we do invite prominent stakeholders. SIP does work with off-campus employers, so we do invite our supervisors. LHSI invites their on-campus supervisors. We invite deans. We've had chancellors come. So it's a big hit every year. So kind of showing some visuals. So here, this was the 2016 ePortfolio showcase, and that was the one that was kind of just generally put on by IUPUI. It wasn't specifically just the internship programs that I've been discussing. So these lovely people, Brandy has told me, Brandy Gilbert, who is the director of LHSI. So these were previous LHSI ambassadors or interns. They have gone on to do wonderful things like be doctors and physician's assistants and psychologists. But this is sort of the format that the showcase takes place in. Students are on one side of a table. Visitors come around to stop by and look at their final project, ask them questions. These next couple photos are from our most recent internship showcases and kind of provide a better visual. So the top two photos are from our most recent one in 2023, so just this past April. In that top left corner, that is a photo of some of the LHSI interns who worked on a podcast at one of the internship sites. And so you can see at that table there, they've really gone out, right? They really set that up to reflect what they were doing. They brought a microphone, they have posters, little giveaways, things like that. And then of course, on their laptops, you can see that their ePortfolio is up with that final project and those work products that they have. And then the bottom photos are from April 2022. And so that bottom left one really does show sort of the layout of the showcase, and it is very much like a job fair vibe. That's how I describe it to students to kind of lower their nerves, because when you say you need to present at a showcase, there definitely is some anxiety with that. So once we tell them that it's more like a job fair and that they're sitting and that people can come up as they please, that kind of eases some things. But when it comes to participant numbers, in spring 2019, so that was the first year that we ever did the internship showcase with LHSI and SIP, we had about 83 interns. Then we were virtual the next 2 years. Spring 2022, we had a little over 100 interns / participants. And then this past April, we had 91. And so that kind of gives you an idea of sort of how many students we're talking about when we talk about presentations and things like that. But that is a little bit about kind of how we got to this point, what we do. I just personally would like to kind of emphasize that partnerships are super important when doing something like this. I was primarily responsible for putting together this internship showcase. And so partnerships with other internship programs, and of course with the Institute for Engaged Learning, were really helpful in putting something like this together. So if you're looking to do it on your own campus, don't do it alone. That would be my piece of advice. So that's kind of all I have to say at the moment, but I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Thank you so much, Emily. This is amazing. And I can say walking into that room and seeing 90+ students with their e-portfolio, you know, their laptops open, ready to talk, and having people walk around and engage their e-portfolios was such an amazing experience.
Questions in the
There-
chat include from Jillian Sudlow. It looks like fun. Do you give them some pointers or training for the event? And I'm guessing that means the interns.
Yeah, so we definitely do. So I can speak for LHSI and SIP. We do have other internship programs that join us, like the on-campus internship program and Higher Achievers. But personally for LHSI and SIP, we facilitate the e-portfolio development and any other professional development through Canvas. That is our learning management system. And so we have several modules built. And one of those modules does include something about the internship showcase. It provides some information about what to expect. And that includes what to bring, like their chargers, because most of the time laptops do not last as long as they used to. So what to bring, what to wear. There is an assignment where they have to sort of submit like a visual of their internship site, and that gets them practicing sort of how to make an elevator pitch. And then of course we do have drop-in hours as well. So leading up to the event, we do invite them to come to our space, and they're welcome to just either have their e-portfolio looked at. They can practice if they want. It's sort of a choose your own adventure in terms of how they get help. But yes, we try to be as supportive as possible so they feel prepared going into the event.
Great. And then just for the benefit of those watching the recording, Jessica said, I appreciate that technology wasn't abandoned once events moved back to face, recognizes how technology enhances the experience. Well done. I had asked how many people come to sit on the other side of the interns tables, and the answer was around 200. The event typically has around 200 attendees, which Brandy provided. And then just a couple other comments. Love seeing actual person-to-person showcase. So much fun. So a lot of kudos being shared in the chat for your work. Thank you for sharing.
So thank you so much, Emily. And I loved being at the event, and I love working with you and Brandy. I mean, occasionally I think like, oh, I know a lot about e-portfolios. And then I get around you guys and I'm like, I have so much to learn about e-portfolios. It's amazing stuff. So Kevin, if you can open the room, I think now let's hear from other people. What are your questions, concerns? What are your showcase experiences? And let's just have a conversation.
I'm just wondering, Debbie, if there's any follow-up. So I'm imagining this is a kind of culminating event. And so is there any expectation for the interns to do something with the feedback or the comments that they received on their portfolios after the showcase?
I will defer to Brandy and Emily.
Great question. Brandy might have more historical context on this. At least for SIP, no, and not really for LHSI. And I think it's because of the timeline in terms of when the showcase happens. So when I say April, it's usually like the second to last week of April, or like this last April, it was the last week. And so students, their mind isn't necessarily on the showcase. They've already partially checked out to finals. That is happening in like the week or 2 weeks coming up. And so the showcase is sort of like our last event, or sort of like saying goodbye to the internship program. And so I know we've had some discussion about, you know, what do students get out of it? How can they take what they've learned and apply it? And unfortunately, it is really on them because we don't really have any guiding assignment or anything to sort of get them to do that. I think it would be great to add, but I think because of timing, it's been difficult to do so.
Thank you.
I do know that we tell them we'll give them feedback in the ePortfolio studio. And we plead with them to upload this to the digital showcase. And in that way, that can kind of live on, in our larger system that's currently a repository, but we're hoping with Holly's help to build a back end so that this giant database is interactive with community clients wanting to build on students' work and request projects, so that we can optimize engaged learning and project-based learning at the university.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. It makes me think of the Merlot database and how you can kind of peer review learning objects that are in the database. And so it would be, amazing, I would think, if students who are showcasing their work on the platform could also get that feedback or comments from visitors to their portfolios. And it makes me also think of like a job searching, like for employers to go in and sort of look for people with a certain skill sets might be a way for them to find potential candidates.
I hadn't thought of that. That's cool. So I know many of you have showcases at your universities. Those of you that have built-in technologies with your learning management system, like PebblePad, like Digication, we have course networking, have easy access to those and ways to facilitate showcases. We'd love to hear more about that.
Well, I will talk a little bit about some experience from some of the schools that I work with. I'm Gail. Good to see everybody. I love the work that you guys are doing. I love the showcase. I loved how happy everybody was, and I think we're seeing that now, right? People are now just excited to be face to face. We were doing quite a few showcases before COVID hit. And it was really hard to get people to show up. So I appreciated the question about how many people are sitting on the other side of the table, because, that can be sort of defeating if nobody shows up. So I wonder, I liked your idea of bring a friend and, trying to get everybody involved. But did you have other little marketing tricks that you used to get people to come in? And did the community come in? Did some of the places that the students were interning come in and give them feedback? Curious how you made such a successful event. I want to replicate it.
So Brandy and Emily are the marketing gurus behind this. And I do think there was some campus-wide kind of notifications, and we have little televisions by the elevators. Did you guys have those that you were using?
I don't know, actually. I don't think so. It's really about who you know.
Right.
And LHSI has been around for such a long time that turns heads. People know what LHSI is on campus. And so when they hear something like this is going on, they tend to come. What Brandy put in the chat is literally what happens, because it is who you know. So we do send out emails to like our listservs that we know, inviting people to come. We tell our students to really push to invite their friends, family, because we want it to be an open event for everyone. And again, like Brandy had mentioned, it is a good opportunity for campus leaders to get out of their office or out of a meeting to go see some student work. So I would say emailing. Brandy also said entire internship teams come to support their interns. So just all of those factors sort of add up. We could probably do more for marketing, but I think just because of where we're at, we don't necessarily need to per se, but that's how we do it.
And Chris brings up a great question. Do people who participated previously come back to look at it?
I believe so. I definitely think so. Yeah. So four more participants come, and then I will mention that at the first half of the day, because of how the internship showcase is set up, the first half of the day is the Institute for Engaged Learning's Research and Creative Activities Day, and that's essentially a poster session. And so that already brings a lot of faculty and students and staff together. And then kind of an hour after that concludes, the internship showcase happens. And so a lot of our former LHSI interns are part of that first event. And so they might stick around if they have time to go see kind of what's going on. And then again, everything that Brandy is saying in the chat is 100% relevant and correct.
So, and I love that I saw faculty there. talking with their students and their interns, and I met several families. So I loved meeting mom and dad and sister and brother. And I particularly value when the university builds bridges between home and school. Many of my students are first generation college students, and their families may not be familiar with what's happening to their child. So the more we can bring them in, I think the better that is for a student's whole self, right? They aren't seeing this as some new separate experience. The family is in on it. And I think ePortfolios are great for that. And I'm going to screen share for just 4 seconds. I didn't have quick access to to one of the ePortfolios. I apologize, but just these are some of the slides that were featured in the ePortfolio. So the work these students are doing is like literally cutting edge work. And that's why the LHSI program is so successful. Those students are in labs where they're not even allowed to talk about what they're doing. It is so innovative. But then they have little sections, right, that they can present so that they're not sharing privatized information.
Speaking of that, Debbie, what kind of training do you provide them to make sure that they aren't going to share that information that isn't appropriate to be shared with for copyright or other kinds of reasons?
That is a great question. I do nothing for that. Take it away, Emily.
Yes, great question. We make it very clear that they need to have that conversation with their supervisor because as program coordinator and director, we only know so much. And so we do provide some information about digital ethics sort of in the modules that I had mentioned before. And part of that, when they're developing their final project and what they're going to say at the showcase, part of that preparation is speaking with their supervisor to check to make sure that everything they're saying is A, correct, and B, that they are not sharing information that they should not be sharing. And so they do have to submit a title and project summary to us because we do make, I don't think it was any of the photos very clearly, but we do make a booklet, a physical booklet that visitors can take with them when they sign in and that interns are provided with, that has all of the participants' titles and project summaries. And so that obviously needs to be checked by the supervisor to make sure that they're wording things correctly, things along that nature. So we do really rely on the supervisors and that supervisor intern relationship to make sure that they're not breaking any rules and things like that.
And the supervisors take this very seriously. So Sophie Carrison, who is so kind to be in the ePortfolio office after being in one of these high-end labs where they basically were doing anti-aging research at the genetics level with DNA, she couldn't take any photos for her ePortfolio in the lab. And they talked with her about that. So she would go set up little variations outside of the lab, snap a couple photos that kind of give you a general idea of what was happening. And then she linked to the article that they were publishing to share kind of more in depth on that work. So the students are aware of the critical nature of their research, and they kind of like being in on a top secret project. And the things and the scope they're doing just blows my mind. I am so impressed. I mean, I've been at IUPUI 7 years. I'm still so blown away at what undergraduates can do at IUPUI that I never saw them do at other major universities. Typically that was reserved for graduate students. So, and seeing undergrads rise to the occasion. It's amazing stuff that people like Brandy and Emily are coordinating for our students. I would love to see some links to showcases in the tabs. That was a great idea. I've visited some of your universities online and know that they have showcases just because I'm nosy about that. So if your school has a showcase, we'd love to see that information in the chat. And then we'll save the chat if you want to be able to get back to those links. And Brandy's making it clear, all the credit goes to Emily for this work. She's really, really done amazing work. I would say that Brandy's also doing amazing work, but she's very gracious about this. Have you all come across ePortfolio showcases that you liked or appreciated? Oh,
Yeah, I participated in, have participated in a couple as kind of an external reviewer and giving feedback. These are more showcases for students to win awards and things. But I know Helen Chen runs one as part of her career class at Stanford University, and I got to participate as a reviewer, and that was really just to give feedback to the students who were creating their portfolios. And so they had a collection of employers, alumni, and then external experts who came in with guidelines about what kind of feedback we were to provide the students so that they could continue to develop their portfolios. And so not a final showcase, but more as a feedback kind of a showcase. And then I participated in another where it was very much geared to career and employment for the students. And so that was also, and then they did have awards for that one where students were awarded prizes for their e-portfolios that they created. So that was kind of interesting.
Amy, would you tell us a little bit about Auburn's showcase? Even though you're not at Auburn now.
Sure. So I would love to see them do an in-person event like the one you all are describing, but they host a student award competition each year and encourage faculty to nominate students for students to self-nominate. And then their writing center supports ePortfolios. And so sometimes the student workers who are tutors in that center will nominate. And they have a committee of student, faculty, and writing administrators to kind of judge, and they choose a few winners each year. And those winners are invited to add their portfolios to the digital showcase. And so I really appreciated the questions on upkeep because these repositories are great, but oh, you gotta watch those links. They go quick.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing a little bit about that. Other comments? Have you found resistance to your showcases, acceptance, people that want you to expand them? What are your experience with showcasing student work?
One of my early experiences when just kind of starting out with portfolios, when I was a graduate student at the University of Florida, I had all of our students anybody that wanted to do a showcase and invited faculty. And again, these were very early days of portfolios and showing student work. And a faculty member came up to me after the showcase. She's like, I really love this work and I love these portfolios, but I'm struck by how text-centric everything is. And again, this was early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. And I was like, well, that's a really interesting comment. What kind of work are students doing in your courses? Are they doing more video and more, and she's like, oh yeah, that's a good point, right? I mean, so what I guess my point is, when faculty come to see the work of their students, it is kind of shining a light and opening their eyes to the kinds of things that are happening. And it does really has the good potential to affect change in the type of work students are doing, which I think is always exciting.
So one thing that we'd like to also kind of explore is if you find that these showcases help with faculty buy-in and student buy-in. And I think, Gail, you alluded to that a little bit. And what we're finding with some of this is some programs are required to have students do outward-facing work. And so our showcase is an easy way for their specific programs to have that outward-facing component. And we run into that with some of our like health programs. And sorry, my dog is jumping up behind me. And some of the other things we've got going on at the university where I think it's part of their credentialing. Their students showcase and share their work. So we have faculty buy-in in those ways, and we help cut some labor out for their department. But have you all found that faculty and students value the showcase?
I can just speak to the last campus that I was on, where we did have our graduate students in education showcasing their portfolios, and they did it at a number of different times throughout their program. But in the final one, they did have their mentors, their more knowledgeable others, other students, family members, and other faculty come and see the work that they were doing. And in that context, it was super transformative, because they were graduate students who were on purpose developing their capacity as educational leaders, with the goal of going back into their communities and making change in the education system. And so to have all of those others come and see the kind of rich work that the students were doing was really powerful, and I think fostered a lot of great conversation about the future of education in Grenada, which is where that happened. So yeah, it was super powerful, and I think the students were really very proud of their achievements, and their portfolios represented that very, very well, just in terms of the unique contributions that each of them were making to the education context there. So yeah, super powerful.
Others, what are the responses to showcases?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Has anybody had a faculty showcase or faculty participate in a showcase? That was done at the College of the Canyons, and it was just for faculty, and faculty were given an award, and it was for kind of moving to that next level. It wasn't really a tenure, but it was sort of a certificate thing. I'm just wondering if anybody else has any experience with that. Here it was a great way, again, to show what faculty are doing, what faculty can do, and try to get more engagement in portfolios. And I think they did achieve that goal. They're growing over at College of the Canyons. But it was the first time I'd ever heard of a faculty showcase.
We've done it on smaller scales, so it's kind of less anxiety, I think. So we did our Rolling Stones tour, where we had faculty kind of compete, and we had another university involved as well. And you'll hear a bit more about this next week in one of our presentations, but we're getting our entire teaching and learning center to walk the talk. So we're getting everyone involved doing an e-portfolio. So, and those will be showcased on our collection. So not yet, but hoping to.
That's wonderful. And those kind of initiatives that bring everyone together, I think, help build a culture of e-portfolios. And that's a challenge. That's a real challenge, I think, for all of us. Amy asks if anyone's working with career centers to kind of align some of these showcase events. And Brandy says that'd be a great idea. And I agree, we should look at that more. That's a wonderful idea. The other thing that I would say as faculty members we could do is have showcases in our classrooms. So I go into a computer lab, all the students in the class pull up their e-portfolio, and then we do a 2-minute chair rotate. They go from chair to chair to chair. We take about 30 minutes, and they've seen everyone's showcase. And there's a little piece of paper beside the computer where they write a little comment if they want to. So even these small scale showcases help kind of build a culture of showcasing and sharing e-portfolios. And students like seeing other people's work, but I always do it with at least 2 weeks left in the class so that they can look at other people's and think, now I have time to change mine, and I have some ideas of what I want to implement and do.
Yeah, and Debbie, that really goes to the whole notion of portfolio as a social pedagogy. I think, being in community and working with others as you're developing your portfolio is so powerful. It can feel, at least certainly from a faculty perspective, it can feel pretty isolating. Like, what do I put on here about me? I don't really know where to start. And I think that's true for students too. So being able to see other people's ideas and approaches can really help. And Amy Shakino has run a great workshop previously at Able on, creating your own professional brand and things like that. And just hearing other people's ideas about how they're, narrating their own journey in their portfolios and how they're situating themselves within their portfolio is really, really important. So encourage everybody to kind of engage with those practices where they can.
Susan comments that ePortfolios generally showing and sharing is really important. And as we try to get more people on board, it's so critical that people can see what we're doing, what's happening. And the big thing is what students are doing and can do. And the ePortfolio brings those to life. And definitely, Jillian, examples help, like showing examples, letting people see what they could do is very helpful. So we have about 10 minutes until our next session. I think Tracy and Kevin, is this a good stopping point?
We are slated to end at 20 after the hour, so that's perfect timing. You're impeccable with your chronometer. So first, Debbie, Holly, Emily, and Brandy, thank you so much for sharing this amazing work, but also starting a really great conversation about how we can spotlight student work, how we can engage students, faculty, and campus stakeholders, and even external stakeholders in recognizing what students can and are doing. And so kudos to you at IUPUI, and thanks to everyone else in the chat for sharing all the great ideas and questions. We are going to have our next session, as has been hinted, in just 10 minutes. It's going to be ePortfolios on the fives, simplifying and streamlining ePortfolio building for students and faculty. And you won't be surprised, it will be Debbie back in front of the camera helping us again. So I'm going to stop the recording, but everyone please join me in thanking the crew from IUPUI for their fantastic presentation.
Special thanks to Holly and Emily and Brandy for turning this around really quickly. Can't believe what you can do in 24 hours, but I love the work that you do day to day, week to week, month to month to help our students and really optimize high impact practices through portfolios. Thank you so much.